Boom, 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 boom. Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, come to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1496. Yes, I did get the number correct. What do you remember about your first cruise? Have you been on a cruise? I was reminded today by a friend who I met on my very first cruise that it had been 14 years. It was 14 years ago that we were on our first cruise. I think we actually departed on like September the 4th. It was 19, no, hang on. It was 2009. I don't know what's going on in this brain of mine right now. Oh, that was funny. We actually boarded our cruise ship 14 years ago today on the 5th of September 2009. And the 7th and Monday the 7th was Labor Day. So this was Labor Day weekend that we boarded our first ship. We flew up to Seattle Brad and I flew to Seattle on the 4th of September. And we had a wonderful time in where were we? Seattle. That's where we took the taxi downtown and to the downtown business district because I'd always wanted to go to Pike's Place. And we had a wonderful time walking around there, having a great time. We stopped by this fruit stand, and this guy's just standing there, and he had these peaches. They were like softball size, not baseball size, softball size. And he's just standing there, and he's slicing off slices for people to try it, and there's juice just dripping. He had gloves on too. There's just juice just dripping down his arm as he's slicing these peaches and nectarines as well, both the size of softballs. And they were so good. I don't think I'd ever had peaches and nectarines that were so sweet and so juicy. They were absolutely perfect. And so Brad and I decided to get a couple of each, a couple of peaches, a couple of nectarines. But the guy said to us, he says, are you going to be eating them tonight? And we said, yes. And we said, well, we can do that. Why? And he said, sorry, I don't know what my dog's doing there. Oh, she's stretching out on the floor. That's what she was doing. And we said, why? And he said, well, they won't be any good tomorrow. He said, but you have to eat, if you're going to take them, you have to eat them tonight. So I looked at Brad, he looked at me, and we went, dinner. It was that simple, dinner. And so we had these beautiful peaches and nectarines for dinner that evening. We had a softball-sized peach and nectarine each, and for dinner that evening, and it was wonderful. We also did a horse and carriage ride around downtown Seattle. I had a great tour that way as well. It was just a wonderful, wonderful adventure in Seattle in the downtown area there by Pike's Place. And we saw the first Starbucks, but we never went inside because the line was out the door and down the street somewhere. I looked at that and I went, yeah, I'm not that desperate for a Starbucks. Even if I was getting it from the original store, I was like, yeah, no. But there was this great seafood restaurant right there on the waterfront that we went and we had lunch. I think it was lunch we had there. And it was beautiful. It was a great meal, a great view. And we just wandered around a little more. That's when we did the horse and carriage thing. When we did Pike's Place, we did the horse and carriage thing and all of that as well. And I remember we're going past the famous fish market there in Pike's Place. And it was so funny. There were all of the LSU was in town to play one of the colleges there. I don't know if it was Washington State or what's the name. There's another one that's up there. And you could see the college mums were walking around in the LSU jackets, and they stood out for ages. And I'm walking just a little pace behind these three women that are there. And we're getting close to the fish market because I've been looking for the fish market. I was like, yes, there's a fish market. And just as I saw that it was there, and they had all the guys going on and all that, this fish comes flying through the air and lands at the feet of these women. And they just went, ah, and disappeared. And I just stood there and started laughing. I walked over, picked up the stuffed fish and handed it to the guy. Said that was brilliant. But it was wonderful because I was able to stand there and just watch because I had learned about the fish market at Pike's Place on training videos when I was working with Marriott, because it was one of the stories that was told in one of the classes that we did. And we had these little plush like Beanie Baby fish, and there was the whole fish story that went on with it. And there were these different training videos that you would do about how they do their business and how they interact with the audience, with the crowds and everything else. And so to actually see it live was awesome. I have to say it was awesome. But the next day we took the taxi down to the ship. got boarded and found out we couldn't get into our cabin. Now, this was our first cruise, so I really had no idea what to expect. I didn't know of anything at the time. As we got on board, we said, yeah, let's go. And they told us when we checked in that the buffet was open for lunch. And so we thought, well, let's go check that. And that we wouldn't be able to get into our cabin until like around 2 o'clock. So we thought, well, let's go and we'll go grab some lunch. So we went and grabbed some lunch, and then we were like, well, what do we do now? And the place was starting to get packed by this point. We had gotten on earlier when there wasn't as many people on board yet. So we were able to get up to the buffet, have a look around and go, there's a lot of food here. Oh my gosh, there's so much food. And we'd always heard about cruise lines and food. And what are you? Sorry, Zeffie's doing weird things right now. I don't know what's going on with her. And so we're sort of like, well, what do we do now? And we said, well, I guess we can go for a walk around the ship. And so we did that, but we kept bumping into people because the reason we were on the ship was we had completed Norwegian Cruise Line's travel agent program. They had a training program where you learned everything about Norwegian Cruise Lines, all of their ships, what makes them Norwegian Cruise Line, what makes them different to other cruise lines, what is very specific about Norwegian Cruise Line. And they had these different levels that you had to go through. And the final sort of graduating one was to do a PhD at sea, which meant you had to sail on a ship. Well, we had, I think there was like 80 people in our group. There was like, about 80 of us travel agents that were on board the ship at the time as part of a group. And we had classes we had to go and attend each day. Which was fun because we learned more, because we also got hands-on experience. We got to do, behind the scene tours into the galleys, and down on Highway 95, which is what they call the road that runs from one end of the ship to the other. It's their highway. They call it Highway 95. And it was kind of cool being down there, and we got to see where the food was stored, where the drinks were stored, the cool storage, the frozen storage, the different temperatures of storages that they had down there based on what food they had, when they brought the food on, how fresh it had to be. We learned about buying food for a shipload of people, how that was all handled and how it was all brought on board. And did they do any extra buying of food as they went along through different islands and places and things. And we were on the Norwegian Star, and we were going out of Seattle. We were doing the Inside Passage, and we were going up through, so if I can remember the order, Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, and then back down through to Prince Rupert, which was in Canada, and then back to Seattle. We got to see Sawyer's Glacier. Didn't get to see it calving though. But it was a great cruise. And so we're just like wandering around, and we're meeting people who I'd met online, because we had a community chat area for different for people to communicate as they're doing the courses and things, and asking questions and questions about Norwegian. We've got a question about a booking, sort of all sorts of different questions and things, like a community chat. And so you got to meet people in there, and you got to recognize them from their little profile pictures and things. And so we ended up meeting a lot of people. So we didn't actually get to explore the ship a lot. And this is something that we learned, when you get on and this is how I always tell my clients when they're going on their very first cruise, is the first thing you do, get on as early as you can, go straight to the buffet, have lunch, and then start up on the top deck and just work your way down through all the public spaces. If you're coming across a deck that's just straight cabins, go past that, because you're not going to be able to get in there anyway. So just miss those ones and just do the ones that has all the public spaces, the theaters, the lounges, the bars, the restaurants, the shopping area, the library, if they've got a library on board, different lounges that they have, and just different spaces like the sports area, the swimming pool, where's that? Where's the spa? And when you stop and you start at the top and work your way down, because the spa's near the top. So what you do at the spa is you go in and you find out what are their embarkation day specials, and you book yourself in for like a massage. Because I will tell you this, if you are on vacation for 7 days, it takes you 2 to 3 days to get into vacation mode. And if you're on a cruise ship, you're almost halfway through a cruise at this point. Now on like night 4, they're putting departure information into your cabin to fill out, so that they can then provide you with your luggage tags with your departure times on them and all that sort of stuff. And you just got into vacation mode. Now you got to start thinking about disembarkation. So So what you do is you go to the spa, you book on embarkation day specials, especially for a massage. And that gets you into vacation mode like that real fast. And because you're already relaxed, you're on the ship, you've got that beautiful fresh sea air, and you're in that vacation mode. And straight away, and you got other people who are struggling because it's like, oh, they're still trying to relax from the fact that they're not working, that they're on vacation, and it can take, it's a 2 to 3 day process. But starting your cruise off with a massage, oh my gosh, so worth it, so worth it. So that was one thing that I learned, is that you do this, because I didn't know about invocation day specials. I knew about port day specials, but not invocation day specials. So I learned about that. But we had a great time, and they had, now on Norwegian, it's freestyle dining. So you just go to the dining room during its open hours. It might be like 5:30 to 9:30 is when they serve. And you can go into the dining room at any time during that to get a table. You might have to wait depending on the time, but you basically roll on up there and go, I want a table, please. Do you want a table for two? Do you want to share a table, and all that? So they ask you those questions. But they had, on the first night on the cruise, they had a get together for all of the travel agents that were on board the cruise. And that's where I got to meet my friend Tony. And we had such a great time just sitting there talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And we became very fast friends. It's like, it was like a best friend the connection was like, he was like a best friend who I've always had. And you just felt that friendship with him straight away. And it was just absolutely brilliant. We got to meet some great people on the cruise that were part of our group. We got to meet people who were not part of our group. One night we had 2 meals. We actually went, Brad and I, on one of the nights, we went to this early sitting and, and had dinner. And we had dinner with another couple and had a great evening getting to know them. And then later on that evening, it was close to like 5:30. That was close to beginning of dining time. And then later on, we were walking around, and Tony sees us and says, "Oh, come with us. We're going to go and have dinner." We said, "We've already had dinner." He says, "Doesn't matter. Come with us anyway." And there was a group of 10 of us at the table. Oh my gosh, the conversations were just absolutely priceless. We had such a great time on that. The extra training we got and everything else was absolutely outstanding. And there was one time that we were, Brad and I were sitting in the front row of the auditorium area, of the auditorium. Actually, it was like a movie theater. And so it was tiered seating. And it wasn't the main theater, but the shows were really cool too. And so we're sitting there in front row. And we had the chief engineer, the hotel director, not the captain, but the first mate, I think it was. There was like, and the chief engineer, the hotel director, the entertainment guy. I need to go on another ship. The cruise director. Sorry, the cruise director. That was it. So it was the chief engineer, the cruise director, the hotel director, and I'm pretty sure, I think it might have been like the first mate, the one that's the right-hand person for the captain. The captain was sailing the ship that time. And so the 4 of them were sitting up there, and we could ask them anything about the ship. We could ask them anything about their procedures and all of that. Well, at the time when I was on that cruise, I actually still worked for Marriott. And Brad and I had been selling cruises for 18 months at this point, and this was our very first cruise. And so I said to the hotel director, there was something she said. And I said, well, I actually work for Marriott International. And I said, so I find it very interesting. I said, this is my very first cruise. And she's going, this is your first cruise? Because, we're all travel agents in the room. I went, yeah. And she's like, oh, okay. I think that kind of shocked her a bit. And I said, and I find it interesting. And I said, I'm finding the room, so the way that you make up the rooms very interesting compared to what you do in a hotel. And so we got talking about that for a little bit. And then I said, but I do have a question. She goes, what's that? And I said, well, people keep telling me that you get towel animals. When you go into your room at night after the turn down service has been done, there's a towel animal sitting on your bed. She goes, yes. I said, I haven't seen any. And I'm a little disappointed. Well, I'd heard about these towel animals and I wanted to see them. I said, so I'm a little disappointed. She goes, well, what room are you in? I went, 912. And she went, okay. And so that evening, we had a fabulous evening that evening. There were shows and all that we did. And then Brad and I went up to our room. It's probably like 10 or 11 at night. He unlocks the door and opens the door and goes, oh, you've started something. I go, started what? And of course, I can't see around my husband. He's 6'5". He was 6'5". I'm only 5'4". He was 6'5". And he was a big guy. I could not see around him to see into the room. So he actually backed out and me back up. And then he let me walk into the room. There were towel animals on every surface in the room. We had a towel animal zoo. We had alligators. We had a monkey hanging off the clip hangers on the curtains. We had a dog with sunglasses on it. And I think they might have found my sunglasses and put them on the dog. We had swans. We had every towel animal that you could probably make were on our room. They were on the desk. They were on the furniture, on the chairs, on the little couch that we had in there. They were hanging from the curtains. They were all over the bed. I just cracked up laughing and said, this is awesome. And then the next day it was the night we were in Skagway, because the next day we were out in the Gulf of Alaska and it was a little choppy. And so we're doing a little bit of this movement in the ship, just up and down, back to front, which is not a problem. But in those conditions, we could not have our balcony open because the spray was actually coming up. We were on deck 9 in cabin 12. So we're only 12 cabins from the front of the ship. And we were getting water spray onto our balcony. This is how much of this we were doing. It was fine. I have no problem doing that at all. It's when it's the corkscrew stuff that starts happening, and that's what the stabilizers do. And so we saw the hotel director that the next day, and I said to her, I says, that was awesome. I said, thank you so much for that. I says, I now feel included on the cruises of having towel animals. So thank you for that. And she was just so like that. And then she sees us going out the outside door, and we were down on like deck 6, I think it was, where the promenade was. And she goes, you're not going outside, are you? I said, I do best in fresh air in these conditions. And she's going, well, make sure you don't get washed overboard. I said, I promise I will not go anywhere near the railings. And I didn't, because they had a rail on the wall of the ship where you could hang onto that rather than going onto the going and hanging on the railing that overlooks the ocean. And so I said, we're not going to be out there for long. And I said, I promise we'll take it, And so we like push the door open. Brad and I, both of us, to push the door open to get out there. That's how strong the winds were. And we just stood out there for about 5 to 10 minutes, got some fresh air, basically stayed hanging onto that rail at the back there, and then went back inside. Perfectly fine. But things I learned from that cruise, because it was the first time it wasn't my first time on a cruise ship. Back in 97, when I first moved over here, we actually flew out a couple of weeks after I arrived out to LA, and we spent the night on the Queen Mary in Long Beach there. But you can't really say yes, I got to sleep on a cruise ship, but it didn't go anywhere. It's basically dry docked, and well, not really dry docked. It's permanently docked there. And that was a really cool experience, because we had a surprise 70th birthday for his mum that day, that night that we stayed on board the ship. But the only other ships I had been on, so that was the first one I'd been. Oh no, I'd been on one years ago, back when I was a teenager. My dad's friend, who used to be firemen together, was in town visiting, and he was on a missionary ship, which was a converted cruise ship. So we got a tour. So it was docked in New Plymouth, and so we went down there, and he took us on a tour around the ship, and I was trying to imagine it as a cruise ship. They'd taken the pool out for extra storage or something. I don't remember what it was, but there was no pools on board the ship. So it was good to see, what some of the cabins look like and things like that. But it was this missionary ship, and they were sailing around the world and stuff. And he was like the chief fire officer on board the ship. But then when Brad and I were on our franchise training for cruise planners in March of 2009, we got taken on board 3 cruise ships, where we got to do tours of the ship between when the last passenger gets off and before the first passenger comes on. There's a little bit of a lull where the cruise line may allow you on board to do a cruise tour, to do a ship tour, but you have to set it up ahead of time and all that sort of stuff. And so we got to do these ship tours, and we got to see it was Carnival Triumph at the time. I know it's changed its name since then. I can't remember what it is. There was, I can never remember. I think it might have been a Royal Caribbean ship. I think it was Royal Caribbean we saw next, but the last one that we saw was the Holland America's Eurodam, and it was a new ship at that point in time, and that was beautiful. But we had a great time exploring these different ships, and of course, totally different target markets for each of those ships. So on Norwegian, my lessons were: get on board as soon as you can, go straight to the buffet, have because the thing that got me touring the ship, this is what got me touring the ship, is as the day before we got off the ship, I finally found my quiet spot to read. I always like somewhere to read when I'm on holiday, vacation. I like to find some place that's not in the hotel room where you can go and sit and read. And so I finally found that spot the day before we got off the ship. Well, that doesn't do me much good since I've already spent 6 days on the ship. But I was sort of like, oh, okay, maybe if I toured the ship beforehand, the light bulb goes off. So you take your carry-on in there. In the carry-on, you have anything you're going to need that day, like your swimsuit, because your luggage is going to take time to catch up with you. You're going to have your swimsuit with you. Any medications that you have, you put in your carry-on. You may want a change of clothes to go to dinner that evening because your luggage may or may not be there before dinner time. So it's just sort of like thinking, okay, these are the things I need to think about and plan ahead for. And so when you're on the ship, you have your brunch, you'll have your lunch, and then you go up to the top deck and you literally zigzag your way down the ship, skipping over the decks that are cabins only, because you're not going to be able to walk down those passages anyway because they have them locked off at the time until they're ready for you to go into your rooms. And I will tell you this, from actually experiencing cruises and also doing ship tours, those room stewards work their butts off. I have worked in hotels where I have, as either the gatehouse supervisor or the front desk supervisor, where I have gone and assisted with cleaning rooms. I actually worked in a hotel before we opened and got to experience where you had to do a deep clean of rooms, and there was 4 of us. We were all sales and front desk and gatehouse. It was actually quite funny. There's the 4 of us there. Where one was a night auditor, one was a salesperson. Oh, and then there was me. So that was only 3 of us. Sorry, 3 of us. It took 3 of us like an hour to deep clean a room. These housekeepers were going in pairs, and they were rocking through the rooms they were doing 3 an hour to our 1 an hour. So we got left with the major cleaning supplies because the housekeepers always knew where we were. They didn't have to go hunting for anybody. They just said, oh, they're back there doing that room. And so we got to lunchtime. We went to the front to the general manager, and I said to him, okay, we really appreciate how hard these housekeepers work. But if you want these rooms cleaned, you're going to have to give them to the experts because they are rocking the cleaning of these rooms. I said, us 3, not so much. Is there anything else that we can assist with? Well, because these particular rooms have been cleaned out, I got given a clipboard and a piece of paper and a pen and got told, this is what needs to go into each of those rooms. And you need to put this many in, da-da-da-da-da. And so I was like, okay. And so we went to, and of course, I had kind of helped direct where everything went into the storerooms. Yeah, we kind of filled those up. And so basically it was sort of like all the linens go to the laundry area. They're washing everything. So that's where the linens all went. But we could only take them in certain numbers because they only had a certain amount of room. And we also didn't have room to put them up on the floors because we had the rooms filled up with, because we were residents in. So we had plates, silverware, glassware, mugs, pots and pans. What else did they have in there? Bowls, whatever other stuff they had in the rooms, because you had the kitchens. And then you also had the room in a box. And the room in a box, I can't remember that. It had like trash cans. It had the stuff for the bathrooms, like the soap dishes. What else was in there? I can't remember, but there was like a room in a box. And so we started having to deliver this stuff out to the rooms. I will never forget this. I will never forget that one night order to Alex. I still remember to this day him vividly. Down on one knee, he had a one of those trolleys for moving stuff around. He had a box of candy on it. And this was a 40-pound box of candy. And he would be down on one knee, and he would go into like 3 or 4, he'd go into 4 rooms because you had 2 doors in each bay, opposite 2 rooms in the bay. So he'd go get out the candy jars that were in there. And he would be sitting down there and counting out how many pieces of candy to go into each jar, making sure the flavors were assorted. And then he'd stand up, walk into the rooms, put them all away, move the box down to the next set of 4 rooms. And I still vividly remember Alex doing this as part of the thing. But basically it was like, okay, what do you want up in the rooms? What we want this many large plates, this many bread and butter plates, this many cereal bowls, this many cups, this many glasses, this many, and so it was like, okay, we need, and so we were telling them, we've got this many rooms to do on this floor because we're working one floor at a time. So we work the first floor first, and this is how many rooms we have. So we need 4 plates, 4 of these plates, 4 of these, da, 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 da. And we had them just rolling it out. And they could only take so many on the cart at a time. So they were coming back and getting refills and all that sort of stuff. And that was fun. So I had been through all of that. Now, also seeing the housekeepers having to turn over, we had 259 rooms. On a cruise ship, you have so many more rooms. You are literally turning over an entire full service hotel in one day, in less than a day. You're basically, the reason you have to be out of your cabins by a certain time is so the housekeepers can, so that the room stewards can get in those rooms, strip them down. They have, they go through, they strip them all first. So all the bedding comes off, all the trash is picked up. And then they start at one end and they go through and they clean. So everything's vacuumed, dusted, sanitized. And then they come through and they make up everything. And they have like, I think it's from like 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's what, 5 hours to turn over however many rooms that they take care of. And they have a room steward assistant. And those guys are rocking. So if you ever get the thing where you've got to give gratuity to the room stewards and stuff, please make sure you pay them. They earn every penny. They just rock it, and they know what they have to do, and they've got certain procedures that they have. They've got a certain way routine for cleaning out stripping the rooms, cleaning them, and making them back up again, ready for us at 2 o'clock to go into our cabins. So please make sure that you don't go into cabins before 2 o'clock unless you are in one of the suites and have been given permission to do so, because those guys are working hard. And as much as I love touring the ships, the bit I hate the most is going in to view a room that they're in the process that they're working in, or making, feeling like I'm in their way because they have their system and they have the speed that they go at. And all of a sudden they've got, 20 travel agents coming through to have a look at a room. So, yeah, please make sure that you do respect those rules. So cruise ship, get on there and just go down through the public areas. Look at all the public areas. Look at different places where they have seating set up, lounges, cafes, restaurants. If you have food allergy, when you're at the spa, you make your appointment for your embarkation day special for the massage. Then when you get down to the restaurant, the main restaurant, if you have any food allergies, talk to the maitre d' about it. Yes, they've already been recorded on your record, but you want to go and talk to the maitre d' because they will then give you the menu for that evening, and you pick out what you want to eat off there. And there's certain foods that they can change for you by that evening for that meal. After that, it's the maitre d' will come to you at the end of your meal and hand you the menu for the following evening, and you tell them what you want, and they make it up without your food allergies in it, which is really cool that they take care of people with food allergies that way. So I've experienced that so much, and I will tell you, you get some amazing food that way. I had one time where I couldn't do dairy, nuts, gluten, and onions. And the pastry chef there came up and we're on Celebrity Reflection. Yeah, Celebrity Reflection we were on. And so I wanted a chocolate dessert. And they came up with this most amazing chocolate mousse cream thing that was my idea of perfect chocolateness. Some people might have found it a little too chocolatey. It was perfect. And I just said to the waiter, I said, I want this dish every night for dessert that we are in here. And then we happened to be up in the cafe area, and the executive chef was up there with another chef. And so I went over them and I said, look, I'm sorry to disturb you. I know you're probably having a meeting, so you probably got on time crunch as well. But I just wanted to say that I have this dessert that they've made special for me because of my food allergies. And I just want to compliment you on the talent that you have in the kitchen, where they were able to create this dish that I could still have my chocolate dessert. He looks at me and he goes, this is chef, and rattled off and I can't remember his name. And he goes, he's the guy that designed your dessert. And I said, may I shake your hand, please? Say thank you. So it was really cool that the chef had actually created my dessert, and he knew exactly which dessert it was. And so I just told him that I really loved the dessert and how he had come up with that creation and things. So I was actually able to compliment him, let the executive chef know that his chefs are doing an awesome job at the same time. And it just felt really cool. So it was really cool. I'd never had the opportunity to do that in the past. So I really liked that bit. But so yeah, once you've explored all the places, you find out where everything is. Then by the time you have done all of that, the rooms should now be open. And if they're not, it's not long before the rooms are going to be open. And then you go to your rooms, you put your stuff there, and then you can go out and explore. You explore your room. That's the other thing is when you get into your room, take pictures of it before you fill it up with your crap, before you unpack any bags or dump any bags, just put them down to the side, walk through, take pictures, do a video of a walk through the cabin, out onto the balcony if you've got one so you can see what the view is. That way you can record what your room looked like when you first got there. And then you can unpack your carry-on, and the other stuff will be along later. And you'll be able to unpack that when that arrives and tuck most of them, the suitcases just slide underneath the bed. That's where you need to put them. But it was a lot of fun. And then after that, you can then go and hang out in your nice little area. You can go up onto the pool deck and everything where everybody is. They have the sail away parties up there. And it's just a really cool atmosphere. And that's when I start socializing with people and talking with people and all of that, because I already know what's where on the ship, and I have a base, not exactly where everything is, but I have a general idea where I've seen things. And so I'm able to go, oh, now, and figure things out. Theaters are usually at the front. Restaurants are usually towards the back. Get that bit right, you're good to go. Sometimes you've got to go, if you're on this end of the ship and the restaurant's on this end of the ship, you might have to go up here, across here, and down here, because you can't go straight through because of what's in the middle of the ship. It may be preventing you from getting straight through. So that's my first cruise. We had a great time. We went to Ketchikan. We did a bus tour there that took us up. We got to see a bald eagle sanctuary, which absolutely tore me to pieces, because here were these beautiful, magnificent birds that would never fly again. And they're sitting there on a log and just looking up at the sky, and you can see the despair in their eyes that they can't fly. And it was heartbreaking to see that. We got to see a trout farm and went all about the salmon. They had a salmon breeding area, and basically it was a salmon breeding area. The salmons would go into there and to breed, and then they were released into the wild to go back out into the ocean and stuff and things like that. So it wasn't a salmon farm. It was just they were kept there till a certain age, and then they were released, making sure that all the salmon was full for fishing season and all that sort of stuff. We got to see a museum with these very, very old totems. And you can't say totem pole because that's saying pole. I guess I've been talking too long. Somebody's like, I need to go. So we got to see some very, very old totems, and they were actually fascinating because each totem tells a story, and we got to hear the different stories of the different totems that we saw. We went up to Totem National Park and got a tour around there and got to see the totems. We went into a meeting house, and you could either go out the little door. You literally had to crawl through this thing, or you just go out the main door. But it took you back out to the same area. And in Juneau, we did a whale watching expedition, and they guaranteed you'd see whales, or they'd pay you $100 as you got off the boat. And they provided lunch while we were out there, and we went all the way out there. And we were just on this little boat that carried at max 30 people. We saw the two-story ones. Whenever they saw the whales, you'd see them roar onto one side of the ship, and you'd see the ship go, and they're over the side. Alice didn't do that because we were just out the back of the boat that we were on. And Brad got some amazing pictures of, we didn't see any breaching, which is where the whale comes out of the water and dies, but we saw plenty of the tails coming up. And Brad got some great pictures of like mom with baby. And we very rarely saw any whale by itself. It was twos and threes. So it was mom and dad and the baby, or a parent with the baby. And the guys that we're talking about with the whales and stuff, they said that's really unusual to see, especially at this time of the year, because most of the whales have gone. And they were surprised the number of whales we actually got to see. We're going to see a lot. We didn't see any orcas, and we found out with orcas that they're actually a dolphin, not a whale. And they're called killer whales, but they're actually killers of whales. So we got to hear this whole lesson about orcas and killer whale, orca/killer whale, and that they actually kill whales and they're actually the world's largest dolphin. So that was interesting because I did not know that. I thought they were a whale, but nope, they're a dolphin, and they actually kill whales. So I thought, you have to do some more research on that one. But it actually was true. And then in Skagway, we didn't have anything booked. And so we were walking down the street and just going in and out of the souvenir stores, doing our souvenir shopping. And we come across this old Victorian building there about halfway down on the right-hand side with the port behind you. And there were these scantily clad women from like the 1800s in their pantaloons and their camisoles hanging out the window, begging you to come inside. And it was an audience interactive / musical of Soapy Sam. And Soapy Sam was like the Al Capone of Skagway. And so we went in and participated in that and got to see that. And as we were buying the tickets, there was a guy standing there next to the ticket thing and saying, "Oh, are you going in to see the show? Would you like to do a tour afterwards? There's a 2-hour tour that goes afterwards. It will cost you an extra $10 per person on top of the show ticket." And we went, "Sure." And the tour, it was on a little mini bus. There was only 15, it was 20-seater, and there was 15 of us on there. Took us all the way up the canyon, all the way into the Yukon of Canada, because we went past the little passport booth. It was hilarious. There was this little booth in the middle of nowhere with these sticks that went up and you could easily drive around either side. It was hilarious. And when in Canada, we turned around and we came back, and there's the Welcome to Alaska sign. And so the bus driver became the photographer for the couples and stuff. And so we got our picture taken in front of the Welcome to Alaska sign. We all got back on the bus, and the passport guy's just standing there in his little booth. And so he watches us all get off, take our pictures, watches us all get back on the bus, and then we drive over there, and he just puts the arm up, waves, and that was it. We've been into Canada and out again. It was that quick. And we drove all the way back down. But what was interesting is, as we're driving up, he turns around and says, "Look over the other side of the canyon," and that's where the railway's going. And so there's this 8-hour railway train drive that you can do that goes from Skagway all the way up into the Yukon, and then it comes back down again. And you spend some time up in the Yukon up there. But he said, but I thought, well, this cost us like less than probably about a quarter of what they paid for the train. We got a much better view. We actually stopped along the way taking photographs of waterfalls, which they wouldn't have been able to do. We got to stand by the Welcome to Alaska sign and our pictures taken. Not sure if they could do that or not, but who knows. Taken back down into the city. We got taken up on the hill behind Skagway there where the cemetery is. And by that stage it was raining. But those that wanted to go see Soapy Sam's grave, he walked them off into the cemetery to see the grave. But because of how much rain was coming down, Brad and I looked at each other and went, "We're not going out there." And then he took us to this outlook area, by which stage it stopped raining, where we had this amazing view all over Skagway, and we could see 3 ships in harbor, including ours. And there were 2 other ships in harbor at the time. And on the very far end of where they have all the ships docked, there's this big cliff face. And on that cliff face, when a ship comes into Skagway for the first time, it actually gets immortalized on this wall. They get to paint almost like a flag size area. They get to put the cruise line's crest on there, logo on there, and then painted underneath is the name of the ship and the date it first came into Skagway. The whole history of every cruise ship that's been to Skagway is on the face of this cliff. And that in itself is a really cool touristy thing to go see. Most people don't see it unless their ship is actually docked on that, and it'll do 2 ships, one behind the other. So unless the ship is actually docked, then most people don't get to see that wall, that cliff face wall. But it's got a lot of history in there, and you can go back and see when the first ship came, what was the first ship and when did it come in. But yeah, so that's a piece of Skagway history. So that was our first cruise and some of the stuff that we learned on it. And we boarded the ship 14 years ago today. Since then, I have done 19 or 20 cruises. Brad did, I think I've done 3 or 4 more than he has. Yeah, he'd only done like 14 or 15 when he couldn't go cruising anymore. And I've done I did one without him the year that he passed because he couldn't move very well. So I did one in 2017, did 2 in 2018. So Oh, and then I did another one, 4, 5. I've done 5 more. I did 5 more than he did. So he did like 14 or 15 cruises, is what he got to do, that we got to do together, including a river cruise in Europe. But that's another story for another day. For now, I'm out of here. I got a dog that would like to go for WALK. So I hope you all have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konera.